We got it going. All right. Today on Big Sound Small Town, I'm with Nashville singer, songwriter legend, Marshall Chapman. Welcome to the show, Marshall.
Thanks, Sandy. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure. Trust me. You live in Shelby, North Carolina. You've been hearing about you for 50 years, you know?
Yeah, well, probably about half of it's true.
Well, if only half of it's true, that's still pretty cool.
And the other half, thank God, people don't know about. That's kind of how that works.
That's great. I mean, one of the first questions I just have to ask you is,
let's hear it.
How do you write your very first song, or not maybe very first song, but first really recorded song, and it winds up an Urban Cowboy? I mean, that's too cool. How does that happen?
Well, I've written a couple of books, and that first book, I actually answer that question in detail because, I'm a Southerner, so everything's got a story behind
True.
it. But I'll try to make it brief, but I was living in a condemned neighborhood. This was about 1973. And actually that was the first song I ever wrote.
Okay.
And, by myself,
Right.
I started co-writing a little bit with Jim Rushing, right around that time I was co-writing with a guy named Jim Rushing who taught me a lot about the craft of songwriting,
Yeah.
just really by osmosis. It wasn't like he said, this is how you have to do it. We would just write songs like Somewhere South of Macon. We wrote that together.
Oh, yeah, that's a great song, yeah.
But Rode Hard and Put Up Wet, I was living in this condemned neighborhood, paying $50 a month rent, and there was some next door neighbors, and we had heard about this songwriter that was playing at the Exit Inn that night, and there was a real buzz about him. He had his first album out on Atlantic Records, and so we were definitely going to go hear him. And we lived near the Exit Inn, but back in those days, you had to get primed before you.
Oh yeah, yes, true.
So we got primed, and then we drove over to the Exit Inn to hear this guy named John Prine that nobody, people were just starting to hear about.
Yeah.
And I remember when we were in line, Chris Christopherson was standing in line right in front of me to get into the club, and I thought, wow, because I knew who he was.
Yeah.
And so it just was one of those nights. It was packed. I was an aspiring songwriter, Sandy, and to hear, you couldn't have a graduate course in how to write great songs than sitting there listening to John Prine.
I agree.
As a young, impressionable young woman that I was, singing songs like Hello in There,
Yeah.
Sam Stone, Angel from Montgomery. I mean, I was completely blown away, as was everybody in the audience. And, of course, Chris had written the liner notes for his first album because he's the one that got him his record deal because he went to hear him in Chicago. But Waylon was in the audience. Guy Clark was in the audience. Chris Gantry was in the audience. David Allen Coe was in the audience. Johnny Rodriguez was in the audience. And before the night was over, they all got up and sang one of their songs. So it was just a real song fest. And I remember we went back after it was all over, we would kind of walk. You know how it is when you've seen something great.
Yeah.
You know it's something great when you can't remember where you parked your car.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So we ended up going back to my neighborhood. These houses were all built in the 40s, and they had those concrete front porches. And we were sitting there at my next door neighbor in the house next door. There was a guy from Greenville, South Carolina, and everybody called him Bubba, but his born name, as South Carolina men have these crazy names, was Marion Bothwell Krigler III. But everybody called him Bubba. And anyway, it was Matt and Ellie, this couple, and Bubba and me. And we were sitting there. Nobody wanted to go to bed because if you did, then you might wake up and think you'd dreamed that you'd heard all these great songs,
Right.
And we just didn't want the evening to end. So all of a sudden, Bubba disappeared and came back with a mason jar full of moonshine. And then the next thing I know, it was noon the next day, and I was face down in my vegetable garden, which was my front yard. I was face down in the dirt, wearing nothing but my underpants, okay?
That's great.
And I woke up, I had the worst hangover, and I remember I crawled back over to the porch because my thinking was reduced to, if I could just get my hot, flushed, hungover cheek on that cool concrete, man, it's going to feel so good. So I laid my face down on the cool concrete and just, you know. And there was my Martin guitar, which I'd left on the porch. Back then, you could leave your guitar on the porch and it'd be there the next day, you know.
Yeah.
And this neighborhood, you know, because of the cheap rent, I got to tell you, Guy and Susanna Clark lived down the street. Steve Gibson, who's now the, you know, band leader at the CMAs and at the Grand Ole Opry, he lived in this little house on the same block. Towns and Rodney had rented a house nearby, and it was just a magical time like there's never been. Everything just open, you know. And
that's in the heart of Nashville too, not like East Nashville.
This was just west of Vanderbilt University.
Yeah, that's in town.
You know, we were kind of the beneficiaries of some shady dealings Vanderbilt had done regarding eminent domain. They had forced all these longtime homeowners, were trying to get them to move out so they could take over the land to have more parking places. And so we were they would let, you know, undesirables move into the neighborhood, hoping these homeowners would sell and move out voluntarily. So they let people like us move in. And I think 2 doors down was like the Hells Angels moved in for a while. All the bikes would be lined up. And a couple of doors beyond that was some guy lived there, an acid casualty, who would make sculpture out of car fenders, and they were all in his front yard. And, of course, I plowed up my front yard. You know, nobody cared what you did because we all knew the wrecking ball was coming, you know.
Yeah.
So it was really, we all got along as a result of that. You know, the old homeowners, they were kind of amused by all of us.
I'm sure.
We'd cook every night and invite them over for dinner, you know, and it was just a great time. If the whole world could take a lesson at that, you know, it would be a better place. But anyway, when I crawled up on my porch, I picked up my guitar and I just started playing this, you know, this up-tempo rhythm, and I just started singing the truth, which was, I feel like I've been rode hard and put up wet. And that song just came out starting with the very first line. I wrote it real fast. And when I looked at it, you know, that second line, it embarrasses me when I sing it now, but it says, well, then I went next. No, it says, later on that night, I had to fight my way back home. I can't ever do lyrics unless I'm playing them.
I know. I can't even do it
Later
then.
on that night, I had to fight my way back home. Then safe and sound, I heard the ringing of the telephone. Any sense at all, and I'd have left that damn thing alone. And this is the line, but a fool loves company even more as the night moves on.
Yeah, that's a great line.
Man, and when I wrote that, I thought, damn, I could do this, you know. I think I could, you know, I think I could do this. And so anyway, that's how I rode hard and put up wet. And then, you know, I started doing the shows and people just loved it. You know, I'm live streaming now. And I think,
I've watched your stuff.
And also, you know, there's an exhibit right now called Outlaws and Armadillos and Outlaws at the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum.
Right.
And they've got my Stratocaster hanging right next to the Army uniform that Chris Christopherson wore the first night he visited Nashville. It's really great, but they've got a compilation CD that they put out to you know, to represent the exhibit, and Rode Hard and Put Up Wet. My version of it is on that song. Of course, Johnny Lee recorded it for the soundtrack of Urban Cowboy. And, you know, I heard that it was going to be in the movie. I remember my manager and I went to see it, and we had to walk out because they changed the line at the very end. You know, where I say nothing could be finer than to be in Carolina. You know, I slow it down, and then they heard me sing one last line, and that's the last, you know, the original lyrics. And then I went, nothing could be finer than to be in Carolina. Well, when they did it in Urban Cowboy, because Gillies was in
Texas,
you know, in a suburb of Houston called Pasadena, Texas. They said nothing could be keener than to be in Pasadena. I mean, how corny is that?
That's pretty corny, yeah.
That was my first taste of Hollywood, and I thought, I don't want to have anything to do with this. So we walked out, but you know, if you ever watch Urban Cowboy, it's when John Travolta first walks into Gillies, and the camera kind of pans him from his cowboy hat down to his boots. You can hear Johnny Lee in the background singing Rode Hard and Put Up Wet.
Yeah, I checked it out. I researched it, you know, before I did this because I just wanted to see it. And I wondered how you felt about that, you know? So, I mean.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that, you know, the people producing the movie made him sing that line.
I'm sure.
liked Johnny Lee. He was great, and I thought he did a great job singing it.
Yeah, and I guess the royalty check from that was pretty huge.
Well, what's really interesting, I mean, this is kind of an aside, and you might want to edit this out.
Okay.
Can you edit this?
I can edit anything.
Well, anyway, my manager is no longer living, but she kind of lost her mind right around that time. You know, probably because she'd been managing me. But yeah, you can leave it in. That's funny.
Yeah, that's funny. I agree.
Yeah, I'll take the blame for her losing her mind. How about that?
That's
so
good.
Leave it in. But anyway, she did. I mean, I was just kind of freaking out because we had a publishing company together, and I went over to her house one day, and there were all these letters that hadn't been opened, and one of them was a contract for Urban Cowboy, and it hadn't even been filled out, but they still put it. Meanwhile, the movie's already been released. Well, I contacted this guy named Richard Perna, and I think he was involved with ZZ Top or something, but he was a manager, lawyer guy, and he just couldn't believe we hadn't signed it. He said, "You are so lucky," because everybody that signed the contract got a deal like $700 for having their song in the movie.
Right.
That's what they signed off for. Well, since we never signed, so it was kind of, that's the whole story of my life. I get lucky for the damnedest reasons. So here's what happened. He went and negotiated it since the movie was already out and got me $25,000. And everybody else got paid $700. And this was years, this was like maybe 2 years later, about 80. It came out in 1980. This is about 1982. That was the first. I mean, I got paid $5,000 for signing with CBS Records. 25, and that's when I thought, "Damn, there's gold in this business." It was a life changer for me.
Oh, I'm sure. Plus, at that time, that 25 at that time was huge.
Yeah, and it wasn't even a single or anything else. I mean, I could just because they just missed it. You know, they never contacted us and said, "Hey, you haven't signed the contract."
Oh,
there's another story that Felice and Boudleaux Bryant. What's that song, man? Where the open scene.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
This guy's looking in the mirror.
Right. Yeah.
And they're playing one of their songs, like "Bye Bye Love," real slow and eerie. And they thought it was just Hollywood thought it was just a bunch of hillbillies, and they were going to get it real cheap. And when they contacted Felice and Boudleaux, they said, I think it was "Bye Bye Love."
Yeah.
I'll find out what it is, and I'll email you.
All right.
But anyway, they said fine. They wanted to pay him $10,000. They told him $50,000, and they said, "Well, we don't want to go for that." Well, they'd already shot the movie and put the music in it, so they said, "Well, fine, just take our song out." And so they got $50,000. I love when songwriters win.
Oh, me too.
I don't know, honest, Sandy. I don't know how any songwriter makes any money now because it's changed.
Now
the internet just changed everything.
Yeah, I get
I was so lucky. Betty's Being Bad was a hit when it was, because
Yes.
now who knows? The last major country artist to cut one of Matraca Berg and I wrote a song called Your Husband's Cheating on Us.
Right. Oh yeah, I know that song. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was on. Trisha Yearwood cut it, and we ended up putting a third writer on the contract. The writer Jill McCorkle, North Carolina girl from
Sure.
Lumberton.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's a great novelist.
She is.
But we had completely, harvested her short stories out of the same name to write the song, so we figured she should have a third credit. So we called Jill and said, "Oh man, it's Trisha Yearwood just cut it. Matraca cut it, and then Trisha cut it." And we told Jill, "Man, go get the cobwebs out of your mailbox because you're going to get some serious money." Well, none of us got any harm. I think we earned $5,000 each on that song. And
Really?
by major country artists, just for being an album cut. And back before the internet, for an album cut, not a single, that would have easily been $50,000.
Sure, it would have. Oh yeah. Oh, my royalty checks come in these days, and they're like 13 cents, 17 cents.
Yeah, and then I started doing movies thinking, it'd be better pay. You get better insurance for sure, but
Yeah.
I get these royalties from Disney every now and then. It's
Oh,
like
God, that's great.
0.04 cents. 0.07. I thought, God, they spent 55 cents for the stamp, man. That's pitiful.
Oh, it is. It is. But you've had a lot of cuts. I mean, you've had a ton of cuts.
Yeah, and if you go to my website and need to fill anything in, it's all there. There's we got a new website. There's a navigation bar, and it says if you click songs, we've got a list of everybody that's ever cut any of my songs and all that stuff. And we got the bio in there.
It's more fun to hear you tell the stories, though. It's way more fun.
And I could have said, that John Prine story is in my first book because, each one of those chapter titles is a title to a song I've written. So there's definitely a rode hard, put up wet chapter because, that story is just so great.
It is. You're great live. I mean, both as a musician.
I was up till 4 o'clock this morning. I actually set my alarm, but I'll give Willie Nelson credit for getting me going this morning because I set my alarm on my iPhone. You know how you can set it to music instead of I can't stand
I hate that.
Or a ringing bell. I mean, that just shatters my psyche. So whenever I hate to be awakened by an alarm, so in order to ease me into the day, I wake up to Willie singing Bloody Mary Morning.
Oh, that's a good one, yeah.
Isn't that great?
That's great.
Well, it's a Bloody Mary morning, baby left me. And I thought that's perfect the way I feel right now. So Willie got my heartbeat going this morning. I give him credit.
Well, how have you been surviving with the COVID shutdown
stuff?
Well,
that's a good question because I tell you, it's got me feeling real weird. 3 things have been keeping me sane since March when all the venues shut down. I quit playing live solo. I would play in the rounds or something just to make it easy on myself. But playing solo is a whole other thing because you're carrying the weight on your shoulders. It's a lot more exhausting. So I said, I'm just not going to do it. Well, this guy asked me to play New Year's Eve, and he's just paying me way too much money. And it was at his house, and it was like 8 o'clock.
Sure.
I would be playing from like 8 to 10, 6 to 8, and then I could come home and be in bed, on New Year's Eve. It sounded like perfect. He's going to pay me $2,000.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I kept saying, well, let me bring the Tracer, Will Kimbrough, Tommy Womack, make it easy. He said, no, and he was just a big fan of my music, and he knew more, he knew my songs that I've forgotten I even wrote. So anyway, Chris, my former husband, who I'm now dating, he said, Marshall, you really ought to do that gig. And I thought, well, I got to get my chops up. I don't even have calluses on my fingers, So I was walking to Centennial Park. I downsized about 2 years ago, so I'm real near Centennial Park.
Okay.
And so I was walking over there one day, and I walked right by this club called Springwater. Have you ever heard of it? It's like oldest. It's the oldest bar in the state of Tennessee. They have a T-shirt that says "Getting Nashvillians Drunk Since 1896."
Great T-shirt.
And they even served booze during Prohibition, and that's a whole nother story. And nothing's changed, and it's on this gravel park lot. And so I walked in. I said, "Who owns this place?" They said, "Terry Cantrell." And I thought, really? Because Terry Cantrell used to own a place called Cantrell's that was the only underground club in like the 1980s when they ruined the exit in. When they renovated it and put those pews in there.
Yeah.
And then Cantrell's was like the cool place to play, and Terry owned it. I thought he was dead. So anyway, I contacted him and said, "Look, I've got a New Year's Eve gig." This was on. Let's see, December the 1st. Well, on December the 3rd, I said I want to play in the afternoon. When there's just 2 drunks in there in the bar with the DTs. Nobody's in there in the afternoon, just so I could get my chops up. I said I want to play in the afternoon, no advertising, and you can't pay me anything. And so it was like, well, I still got to run sound. He was bitching and moaning.
Right.
Well, we did it, and even with no advertising, I played 20. I was playing in there 2 days later, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I went, and it was right outside my front door. So I don't have to worry about traffic, no parking. I just grabbed my guitar and crossed the street, and I'm in Springwater. So I went and I played 20 shows. I played on Christmas Eve, which was fantastic.
Oh, that's great.
And of course, we started being packed, and they started selling more beer in the afternoon than they were selling at night. And then they started really loving me,
Right.
And the kid that booked it, he was real skeptical. Here's this 71 honky woman, and he loves like wrestling on TV and punk rock. And he was real skeptical because Terry told him to give me all the shows he could. And he's like, yeah, right. And, of course, we became best friends, too. It's just been a great thing all the way around. Well, so I started doing it, and I had so much fun after my New Year's Eve gig. I kept doing it through January and February. Then COVID hit, shut the club down, and I went and talked. I said, I had a girl working with me because I had a new record out called Songs I Can't Live Without.
Yeah.
Have you got that?
I do.
Good. Well, anyway, that makes me happy. Anyway, I had a young woman we had hired, to help me with social media because I'm not very good at all that. And so she said, well, let's do a live stream. And I said, what's a live stream? I didn't even know, nobody knew what Zoom or any of that was back then. Now it's become like a verb in the English language. But anyway, so she said, why don't we start live streaming every Saturday at 3 o'clock, just like you've been, so we go in the empty club, and we're still doing it. So in a long story to answer your simple question, what's keeping me alive during COVID is those weekly live streams at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock your time,
right?
That I've been doing, most of them at Springwater, but we've done 3 or 4 at Pawleys Island, because that's the second thing that's kept me alive. Every now and then, I just get stir crazy because I'm in this high rise. It's great, but it's, a box in the sky.
Yeah.
But I love living in the sky. I'd rather be up in the clouds than
I hear you.
Under the trees with the chiggers,
Yeah.
So anyway, Chris and I we've driven to Pawleys Island. You don't believe this. It's 1,200 miles round trip from Nashville. We've driven there, the two of us, 6 times since March.
No way.
Yeah. And we go different ways. We've gone through Atlanta and Athens. We usually go through Asheville and Spartanburg.
Right.
And then when we get to Columbia, there's many different ways to get to Pawleys Island.
Oh, yeah.
Columbia, there is roads to Rome.
I
mean,
agree.
we go on some roads that you just wouldn't believe. And we go through these little tiny towns. And every time I go through a little town I'd never heard of, I'll say, Chris, if Chris is driving, or if I'm driving, he'll Google it, and we get it on Wikipedia, and we say, who famous lived here? Mostly, it's really been fun.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we love to drive, but there's something about the ocean and going to Pawleys Island. I've been real lucky. There's a couple down there that I met in Mexico, and so we've stayed at their house a few times. And then my cousin, I found out she had a house down there, and last 2 times we were down there, she let us stay at her house. And we'll stay about 6 days, and then we jump in the car and drive back to Nashville. And every time we do, I start crying. But anyway, those 2 things, and I hate to say it, but the reason I moved our interview up 2 hours, I'm going to go play golf with Chris at 2 o'clock. But there's this funky golf course west of here that's a par 3 course. It's just 9 holes, and then it's a driving range. And it's run by all these old guys that kind of dote on me. And like the clubhouse is a trailer, it's like a club course. So it's my kind of place,
Yeah, that's right.
And they don't care if I take my shirt off. It's so warm. I can't believe it's so warm because I end up, starting out in layers, and today it's supposed to go to 70. And so it's just, we're going to play golf.
That's cool.
And that really takes me, I used to play golf. All the men in my family play golf, in Spartanburg. It was a real big deal.
Right.
My mother taught me how to play golf, and I was actually a good junior golfer. I came in 3rd in the state. And then I went through this period, when I was playing rock and roll, I was embarrassed. I didn't want anybody to know about
that you played golf.
And so I threw everything away. I quit playing golf. I said, it's just a sport for
rich people, yeah.
Rich Republicans in awful-looking clothes.
Yeah.
I ain't going to play it anymore. So I shouldn't say rich Republicans, just rich people in awful clothes. But it just seems most of them are Republicans now.
Yeah,
but,
true. That's true.
Anyway, and speaking of politics, here's my statement. I never let politics stop me from loving anybody. Otherwise, I couldn't love half the members of my family. So that's the end of that. And by the way, my live streams, a lot of times since the election, I end them with "He's Got the Whole World in His Hands," that was
right.
The last cut. And that part where I start signifying at the end, I'll sing, "He's got the whole world." And then the last verse, I'll say, "He's got everybody that voted for Donald Trump in his hands. He's got everybody that voted for Joe Biden in his hands. He's got everybody that didn't vote at all in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands."
That's great.
So anyway, that's how we ended.
That's great. I mean,
I've only had to block one person that started teeing off about one of the candidates. I can't stand. I don't know why people talk about politics on Facebook. you're just opening yourself to have half the people in America hate you.
Yeah, that's true. You are.
And it's sad. I can't believe we can't have discourse now without being hated, but that's what it's come to.
It has.
And it's a crying shame.
It really is.
Yeah. I'm enjoying talking to you, man.
Man, I know you got to go.
We might have to drive through Shelby next time.
Hey, well, come up. I'll take you to the Earl Scruggs Center. It's pretty. They have actually Bernie Taupin has a painting in there that got there by accident, but
Oh yeah, Bernie Taupin. He was in the Eagles, right?
No, it's Elton John's writing partner.
Oh yeah, that guy. Yeah. Oh, Bernie Leadon. I got the
Bernie Leadon. Yeah, I know Bernie. I know him too. Yeah. But
that's what happens when you're 71. You about half what anybody says registers.
Well, listen, I know you got to go. I'd love to continue this at some other time, but you're a blast. I mean, this is. I will have to.
We can talk again if you like.
Sure, let's do it.
Or if you want to email me some questions, I don't know if you write this stuff out or what.
No, it's free form.
It's just all.
I'll let you go.
Okay.
So I just let you say whatever you want to.
Well, I think I said it all with that last
that was
verse.
A great
He's
one,
got the whole world in his hands. But I got another song that says, "I love everybody. I love everything."
Well.
But I love everybody until they give me reason not to. But even when people hurt my feelings, I love them.
Well,
I've
that's
told
the way
people,
to be.
I said, I love everybody, but that doesn't mean I might not want to kill you.
Yeah, I understand that. I would definitely understand that.
And one of the reasons I'm against the death penalty is not because I'm on some high, namby-pamby grand, judgmental ground looking down. It's because I don't want to activate that part in my own soul, because I know, given the right circumstances, that I'm capable of killing somebody.
Sure.
I know that.
Yeah, I probably am too. And
if I walked in a room and somebody was torturing Chris or had his head in a vise and were tightening it up and torturing him, and somebody put a gun in my head, I could blow whoever was torturing him's brains out and sleep like a baby that night. I know I could.
I hope that doesn't happen to him.
Yeah, I do too, because I don't want to kill anybody.
Well, listen.
Anyway,
y'all have fun playing.
There's so much to talk about. The older you get.
Oh, I could talk with you for a really long time. Maybe we'll do this in some sections.
Okay. Well, it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sandy.
All right. Thank you, Marshall.
I appreciate you, man.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Look at what we found. It's a big sound in a small town. Far from the bright lights, they're making music every night. Hear what is all around. It's a big sound in a small town. It's a big sound in a small town. It's a big sound in a small town.
Hi, and welcome to Big Sound Small Town. I'm your host, Sandy Carlton, and this is a podcast about the lives and stories of the musicians, writers, artists, and their associates that have their roots in the small towns and communities across America. If you like what you hear, tell somebody. Enjoy.
Running on a tank full of burning desire. She's heading out on highway number 29, leaving Lochapoka, Alabama behind. Leaving Lochapoka. She got great big dreams, too big for a small town. Got songs in her head just swirling all around. And now she's singing them out loud and it feels so fine. Leaving Lochapoka, Alabama behind. Leaving Lochapoka. Yeah, hello Nashville, Music City, you better look out, 'cause she's a real nitty gritty, got a lot inside, she's gonna let it shine. She's gonna let it shine. Leaving Lochapoka, Alabama behind. Leaving Lochapoka. Shining Lochapoka, Alabama behind. Leaving Lochapoka. And as the sun goes down in all the little towns, as the people in the houses begin to settle down, there's a flash of light across the Tennessee state line. Leaving Lochapoka, Alabama behind. Leaving Lochapoka. Leaving Lochapoka, Alabama behind. 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 Leaving well. There was Matthew, Ellie, and Josh. Yes, the gang was all down. Well, I had a jug of moonshine from Carolina. Well, I thought I was dead, but they said I sang one last line. Nothing could be finer than to be in Carolina in the morning.